Good evening, Ojai residents. I'm David Marin with the League of Women Voters. Tonight, I'll be the moderator for our forum presenting the candidates that are running in two different Ojai Valley Unified School District areas. We have two candidates in Area 1, two candidates in Area 5. There was a third candidate invited in Area 1, but we did not get a response, so we are moving forward with these four. The way this will work was we'll have opening statements. The candidates will then respond to the questions you submitted when you registered, and then finally closing statements. But before we begin, let's hear from the president of the League of Women Voters, Kathy Morgan.
Thank you, David, and thank you to our candidates for being here tonight. The League of Women Voters was founded in 1920 with the mission of educating a new group of voters, women, who were granted the right to vote nationwide with the passage of the 19th Amendment. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization committed to providing voters with factual, non-biased information, and as such does not support a particular candidate or political party. The League today continues with the mission of empowering voters and defending democracy by registering voters, providing information about the candidates and the issues, getting out the vote, and supporting fair and transparent elections. The candidate forums are an opportunity for the voters to hear from the various candidates and to get the information that they need to make an informed choice when they vote. Attendees to the forum are invited to submit the questions they wish asked of the candidates when they register. The candidates have not been provided the questions in advance, and each candidate will get the opportunity to answer the questions posed. We are glad that you are here tonight to hear from our candidates. We hope that you get the information you need to make an informed choice. And at this time, I would like to turn it back to our tonight's moderator, David Marin. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. We will begin our opening statements. Phil, you're first. When you're ready, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Phil Monsharsh. I'm a 41-year resident of the Ojai Valley, and I'd like your vote to represent Area 1 on the school board. I firmly believe that the most important thing for voters to consider in this type of election is the candidate's background and qualifications and expertise. So let me fill you in on mine. Both my daughters were born here, raised here, and educated here. As I mentioned, I've been here for almost 42 years. I am myself a product of a public high school and elementary school education. I'm an honors graduate of Yale University and the Columbia University School of Law. I am the co-founder in 1987 of the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, served as its first president until 1994, and remain on its board now some 37 years later. I've also served as the past president of the Yale Club of Santa Barbara. I am an attorney by profession, mostly retired now. I've also served as a judge pro tem in the superior courts in both Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, and for many, many years been appointed by the courts to serve as a mediator, arbitrator, and settlement master. I believe I have the skills and qualifications to analyze any issues that might come up, and would like the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. And our next speaker is PJ with Area 5. And let me unmute you. Already done it.
Hi, everyone. My name is PJ Garahan. I am your candidate, or one of your candidates, for Area 5. I am a father of 3 young kids. One of them is in the school district, Ojai Unified, and 2 others are going to join him soon. So I have a lot of motivation to serve this community and to make this school system as positive and as good as it can be. I see a lot of my friends and colleagues that are making decisions to send their kids to private schools. And I would like to take actions to make the default decision here in the Ojai Valley to the public school, unless there's a need for an individual family to move to a private situation. So a little bit about me. I went to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. I have a degree in construction management. I know that managing construction doesn't sound immediately congruous with the role of school board trustee, but the school board is tasked with the extraordinary responsibility of managing in the neighborhood of 80 to $100 million worth of construction through measures J and K. And there has been some issues with the state review boards, and in my opinion, the decisions that have been made over the last several years. So I've got all the motivation to do the right thing. I want to be of service, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Jim Halverson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Jim Halverson. I have been a family physician in Ojai since 1987. I was moved to run for the school board based on two events that occurred in the last year in our community. The first was the issue regarding the Chaparral campus and development of that campus and the very, very nasty environment that existed between the school board and various community stakeholders. That was followed shortly thereafter by, once again, significant disagreement about the right size of the Nordhoff High School pool. I basically got discouraged and motivated to run because I realized that there's developed a divisiveness in this valley between the school board and key members of our community. I feel like I represent the community well. I've been very involved with many, many things in our community, our hospital, Rotary, and I've been very involved with many, many things at the high school level, everything from doing football physicals every year, to being on the sideline for 35 years, to producing the musicals, to being the first president of the music department parents board. It's my goal to help restore a more supportive and cordial atmosphere between the community and our school board.
Thank you, Jim. Our next candidate is David Walker.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this candidate forum. My name is David Walker, and over the last 8 years, my wife and I have had the privilege of raising our 3 kids here in the Ojai Valley. All 3 attended Miramonte Elementary, and our youngest is currently in Mrs. Patch's 4th grade class. Our second is attending Matilaha in 6th grade, and our oldest has chosen to try homeschooling this year. I was fortunate enough to work for Ojai Unified in the business office as a student data specialist. During my time there, I got to interact with administrators, teachers, counselors, and classified staff on a daily basis. I have a great respect for all the faculty and staff that serve our students, including my own. And if elected, I will draw on my experience in the public school system and my relationships with parents and staff to do the business of school, but more importantly, to positively impact the lives of students.
Sorry, PJ, you'll be up first on this question. Some of you have touched on a few things. This question, also a minute and a half, or I'm sorry, 1 minute. We'll give you, no, I guess we're doing a minute and a half. That's fine. You all have a minute and a half. You've talked about the greatest needs. How are you actually going to solve these? More than just talk about it, do you have strategies for some of the biggest problems you see? How would you try and solve them?
Sure. So I see 2 significant needs. One of them being the facilities and the management of the construction. You know, the direct idea there is to bring in someone with my qualifications to oversee that process from, you know, the lens of a seasoned professional in the field. You know, the other thing is with educators, and there's been a lot of recent unrest and I don't know if I'd call them protests, but call it gatherings of educators asking for fair compensation through their collective bargaining agreement. You know, the fact that Ojai teachers are among the lowest paid in the county really is meaningful. It's meaningful to them, and I think that there's a level of respect to that team, that group of educators that is not currently being met. So in order to actively solve that problem, we need to get into the financials and work with Superintendent Morse and figure out a way to change that fact. If that means that we have too much staff and that, those staff dollars need to be reallocated to the people who are here, then that's one thing. But it seems unacceptable. It is unacceptable to me that the community of Ojai has among the lowest paid teachers in the county.
Thank you. And David, same question to you. What do you think are the greatest needs and how will you go about solving them? Here we go, David. Let's start over and when you're ready.
Well, first, I think it's important to understand the difference in the roles between board and administration. The board sets mission and vision and board policy to accomplish large strategic goals, is a fiscal fiduciary, and hires and evaluates one employee, the superintendent. So as a board member, I will support and hold accountable the superintendent on a variety of metrics, but the board has very limited direct influence over things like enrollment in the district. One of the major issues that I see that needs to be addressed is just transparency. And one very specific thing that we could do to address that is to have all budget items not be included in the consent agenda and rather be discussed separately.
Thank you. Phil, same question to you. What do you think are the greatest needs? How will you solve them?
I think basically I see three big needs. One is monetary and budgetary issues. And those are a myriad. Has there been waste? Has money been well spent? Are there untapped monetary resources for things like electric buses and clean school programs? I think all the budgetary issues ought to be public. I think internal structural concerns, how to make the experience better for the kids, get some community forums going and see what the parents are interested in and what the kids like or dislike, reach out to any disaffected newcomers and find out what we need to do to get their children enrolled in our schools. I think we ought to look into tutoring programs, acceleration days like the LA School District just announced. I think there's some logistical issues on how to cooperate with the city and the county on school properties, pool, the housing, transportation, et cetera. How I deal with that? I'd find out what actions the school board and the school administration has or hasn't taken and why. And then I'd take a look and see what challenges there are and what possibilities might present themselves. And I'd look into moving forward to try and come up with some solutions. I won't propose to have all the answers now because I don't know all the materials now.
Thank you. Jim, we'll wrap up. Same question with you. Greatest needs, how would you solve it?
I think one is financial transparency. I had a chance to talk to Linda Taylor, who was retired in 2004 after many good years in the district and was a board member for 12 years. And she said her number one priority when she joined the board in 2004 was to improve the financial situation and reimbursement for teachers and classified staff. And after 12 years, she found that it was a huge task and a difficult task. Unfortunately, there is a limited pot of money out there. And until we figure out ways to redistribute or relook at that pot of money, we are going to be struggling with reimbursement for our teachers. I'm very committed to that. I'm very committed. We had the opportunity recently at a meeting to stand outside with the teachers while they waited to go back inside during a closed board hearing. And I got a chance to talk to, as did PJ, a number of teachers and their frustrations and opinions about the district and its financial reimbursement. The second, it's very important, is the declining enrollment. And I think the somewhat difficult perception that our public schools have right now. I want to be a real champion for our public schools. My kids went through public schools here. They thrived in the schools. They got to go to Carnegie Hall as part of the music department. I think our public schools do a wonderful job, and we need to get that message out so more people keep their kids in our public schools. That will help our budget.
Thank you. Jim, we're going to stay with you for the next question, and let's talk about performance, student performance, test scores. What are your thoughts about how to improve test scores and retain? And we'll just stay with test scores. We won't get to retaining, but there is a concern that LA Unified, they've released their test scores. They were very poor. The state has not yet released test scores for the state. I'm not sure if Ojai Valley has released their test scores, but regardless, do you have some specific strategies to try and improve the performance for students?
Well, I think, again, I'll get back to transparency. I think we owe it to our community to release our test scores. Right now is a difficult time with the last 2.5 years of the COVID pandemic to be able to fully comprehend what those test scores really mean with the effects it's had on all of our children. I think having the opportunity to improve the if you will, the enthusiasm of our students, many of whom are still struggling to just get back into the classroom and not alone be able to perform at the levels they used to, is a major, major challenge. But it starts with making our educators, our classified staff, and our community supportive of the kids again. There's been a real disconnect in a number of ways, including criticisms of our school district regarding school test scores. And many people point to that as if that is the way we measure the success of a school. I think test scores are important, but I think given the demographics of the Valley, the high number of special education kids we have, that we face a more difficult time in this Valley because of some of those demographics. I believe once we support our educators that we're going to see more success on test scores, but more importantly, more success on student happiness being in our district.
Thank you. Phil, same question. What do you think you can do or the board can do to improve test scores?
Well, your question was twofold at the beginning: performance and test scores. Performance, I think, is listening to the students and their parents and finding out what things they're interested in that they're not being provided. As far as test scores is concerned, I have a few ideas, I think targeted tutoring would be a great idea. I think acceleration days for that purpose would be a great idea. I think the possibility of magnet programs in the elementary schools, so parents could send their children to one school if they were interested in STEM, one if they were interested in performing arts, one if they were interested in math, etc. I think mentoring programs. I think big brother, big sister programs. I did that when I was in college and it was remarkably successful. I did it with elementary school students in New Haven, Connecticut. I think we need to look into whether the curriculum and the way we're teaching it works. I'm not sure whether a complete reliance on Chromebooks and working everything out online is the best way for young children to learn. So I'd like to look into that. I think those are all some of the things we can do.
Thank you. David, same question to you. What do you think the school board can do to improve test scores and performance?
Sure. Well, I know that state testing can cause some anxiety for students because my children have experienced that personally. And I think one thing that we can definitely do is practice. Test taking is a skill that requires practice, just like anything else. And we have the ability to give practice tests and to teach our students test taking skills. As Jim was saying earlier, test scores are just one measure of success and performance. And really what I believe is the most important thing is that the students are mastering the content. And that may or may not be reflected accurately in test scores, but those are my ideas.
Thank you. And we'll go to PJ for the wrap up on this question about improving student performance and test scores.
Sure. Thank you, David. A lot of good things already been said. I think that overall student body wellness, emotional wellness, physical wellness, attendance, really make a big difference. So programs like tutoring, I think that intra-school mentoring makes a big difference, at least at the lower levels. A third grader taking a look after a first grader. I think exploring that on the secondary levels of education would make a big difference. Beating the same drum about educators, it's not a question of, throw more money at a compensation and you will get a different test score. I think the test score is, like others have said, one metric that isn't the target necessarily. Having the students with a mastery of the subject and being well prepared for whatever the next step is, be it a a career right out of high school, be it a college education, be it an independent study into a subject that they've learned because of their experience at school, is the most important thing. And with it was shocking to hear the stats in the July school board meeting about how many kids are experiencing a level of depression on a daily basis and a level of really hard times. And the pandemic is part of that, but healthy kids, well-compensated instructors, I think brings up test scores.
Thank you. David, we'll move to you for the next question. It's been mentioned already a little bit about declining enrollment, and I'm sure the audience knows Ojai has a significant declining enrollment, and the percentage of students who actually live in the Valley, student age, but don't go to public schools, go to private schools or other options. So do you have some ideas about how to increase enrollment, how to attract students who are now in the private sector to come back to the public system?
Yeah, I don't know that the district has a responsibility to be continually focused on the students that we don't have rather than the ones that we do. I believe in public education, and so I would love for everyone in the Valley to attend their neighborhood public school. However, I don't want us to lose sight of serving the families that we do have to the best of our ability because of a continual pursuit in trying to get Oakview families to leave Sunset for Ojai Unified, or to get Ojai families to leave private school. I believe our focus should be on doing the absolute best job that we can for the students who walk through our doors every single day so that we can retain those students. And if we excel there, a secondary benefit will be attracting additional students.
Thank you. Jim, same question to you. What can be done about declining enrollment and attracting students back to this public school?
Well, declining enrollment is a very difficult issue because it so much involves, again, the demographics of our valley. I was at the debate or the meeting last night at Oak Grove and heard our city council candidates speak a little bit about affordable housing. And that's a laudable goal. And I think that's a great goal. Unfortunately, as most of you know, we've had about 12 new homes built in our valley in the last 12 years. And all of those homes are built for people at a much higher income level. So that doesn't bring in students. I'm looking at the other three candidates here are exactly what this valley needs. It's young men with families going to our public school, yet it is difficult for families to be able to afford to come into the valley. So yes, we need to look at affordable housing. We also need to look at affordable housing for our teachers. There are many teachers that work in this district that come up from Ventura or other areas. As regard, I think that's one thing. There's that. The other, again, I'm going to go with the perception of the district. My kids, and I hate to harp back, but they are almost 40 years old, so I'm not bragging on them as much now, went to Carnegie Hall twice in high school. If I were a young person interested in music and knew that Bill Wagner was the music director still at Nordhoff and has been for the last 30 years, there is no doubt that I would enroll my children in our public schools to take advantage of that. And that's one of many examples where our public schools really excel.
Thank you. PJ, your thoughts about stemming the tide of the declining enrollment and attracting students?
Yeah, that, what you described, that the overall population of school-aged children does not appear to be declining in Ojai, at least not from where I sit. Like I said in my opening remarks, I think that making the public school system the default option for more families is really important. I think that we do have a responsibility to focus and serve those students who do walk in the doors, those people who have selected the Ojai Unified School District. And the attraction is going to be through the success of those students. When people from the outside see that Topa Topa has a functional organic farm, when they hear about the music program that's now beginning in 3rd grade and 4th grade, when they hear about a robust arts program in the high school, and when they see their neighbors' kids excelling, that is the best way to do it. We don't need an ad in the paper. The self-promotion is not the recipe to bring in more more students who already live here in the Valley. I believe that it's, the excellence of the existing students and bringing in as many as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll wrap up with you, Phil. Share with us your strategies for dealing with declining enrollment and trying to bring students back from private.
Well, I've heard from a lot of people in the last couple of weeks that they and their children, their younger children, don't think computer and online learning is working, especially in math and in English. And that a lot of people have chosen not to send their kids to the local elementary schools because of that. I think we need to look into that issue and see if we can go back to old school teaching to get the kids more interested in learning English and math. I think to stem the enrollment decline, we got to look at obviously raising test scores. People come into school districts because they want good schools. I think we need to get the word out, emphasize the positive. We need to have local forums where we can get the parents invested in the kinds of things, kinds of experiences they like for their children. And I think we have to work with the city and the county for workforce housing. We don't have any direct control over that, but to the extent we can try and partner with them to let them know how important it is, I think that would be a great idea. Those are the kinds of families we need here to increase the enrollment.
Thank you. Phil, we're actually going to stay with you and go on to the next question. So one of the ramifications of declining enrollment is school sizes, the number of students on a particular campus. And every school board has to wrestle with the issue of, do we close a campus? And of course, the uproar from those in the community whose students go there. There's a couple of issues. So what would be your view on selling excess school property? And that's also the question about the district office, which was much in the news recently. So are you in favor of selling the school district property to be used for some other public purpose? What's your view on closing schools that have low attendance?
Well, that's a complex 3 questions in one. I don't know about selling the school district property because I don't know all the pros and cons. I'd sure like to see the feasibility studies. I'd like to see the information as to what might happen or not happen if the properties were sold. Personally, for the property downtown, I would have preferred a workforce housing plan that made some sense so we could house teachers, school workers, nurses, other people here in town that are what I consider essential workers. I'd rather see that than selling to some outside person that's going to put up a hotel and the school district's only going to make a couple $100,000 a year on it. As far as closing schools, that's a tough question. I think everybody likes the idea of neighborhood schools. My general thrust would be in favor of keeping neighborhood schools open if at all possible. That's kind of why I like the idea of maybe magnet schools in the elementary schools or magnet classes so that you could draw kids from all over the whole Ojai school district to go to certain elementary schools for certain things, try it for a year or two, maybe try something different for another year or two.
Thank you. PJ, we'll go to you for this question. Share with us what your thoughts are about selling the excess school district headquarters and also selling schools or doing something to close schools.
Sure. So I'll start by saying that closing a school would be the absolute last resort. I think that we've got 3 great standard elementary schools. I love that San Antonio has moved to a K-8 model in order to kind of differentiate its offering. And obviously we need a middle school and a high school. So I don't want to forget about Summit and Rock Tree Sky. I think that there have been some creative work done in Upper Ojai, which is really important to the Ojai community. So closing schools would be, in my opinion, a last resort. Restructuring schools, making schools have, individual magnet programs, like you had said, Phil, I think would make a lot more sense than that. And on the downtown, district headquarters, that development plan seemed flawed. I was also really disappointed in the kind of vicious response to it. I think that it was honest people trying to do, trying to do something good. I think it had a lot of flaws. It didn't work, but workforce housing, affordable housing, senior housing are all ways that, that space could be used. I've worked with companies like Mini Mansions, the Ventura County Housing Authority. There are developers out there that will assist the district through that process to create affordable and senior housing as a component of that development. David, you're still muted.
Jim, you're up, and your thoughts about dealing with the school district headquarters and also closing schools.
Well, I would be interested in leasing the school district headquarters downtown. I think there's a major difference, there is a major difference between selling that property and all the stakeholders and all of that involves versus the district still owning and leasing the property and making money off of the ability to lease that. That also gives the district a little more continued oversight of the property. And I think could help the district do things like were suggested just a moment ago by actually perhaps putting teacher housing or other affordable housing options on that property. As regards to closing a school, I agree that that's a last option. However, it's an option that has been studied in the past. In fact, Linda Taylor again told me that, and many of us may remember who've been here long enough, that was a major issue back around 2010, around 10 to 12 years ago. And 7-Eleven committee was appointed and looked at that issue, and basically it ended up being voted down 4-1 to close any of the schools. Summit was probably the most likely one at that point. Summit now is thriving with Rock Street Sky. But again, when you look at the issue of improving reimbursement for our teachers, you have to look at where can we save money. And I think as a board member, we at least have to be up. I'm certainly not going to propose we close a school, but I'm willing to listen if that is one of the options that we need to consider.
Thank you, Jim. David, same question to you about using or selling the excess district property, including the district office, and what about schools?
I think we have to consider the highest and best use of the district office property. There might be some feasible options out there, but it may be that the current use of the district office is already fulfilling that as kind of this funky multi-use property that has a preschool and district offices and a high school, and transportation department is there, maintenance buildings are there, auditorium and a skate park and the boardroom are all there. But we have to think about the cost too associated with moving off of that property and the benefits that would come from using that for something else, or maybe it's possible to stay and do something with just a portion of the property. But then as far as closing schools, I kind of hesitate to talk about that, just not having been on the board and not being privy to all the discussions that have taken place. But I can certainly imagine that that would be one of the most difficult decisions that a board member or a board would have to make. And certainly I would want to have an open mind and desire to listen to the various stakeholder groups before coming to a conclusion about that.
Thank you. I'm going to take a moment to remind the audience that we have candidates from two different parts of the city. So for Area 1, we have candidates David Walker and Phil Monchar. So if you live in that district, which is mostly on the west end of the valley, then you would pick one of those two. If you're in Area 5, which I believe is on the eastern end of the valley, the two candidates are PJ Garahan and Jim Halverson. We are going to go to PJ for our next question. And PJ, we haven't talked about this yet at all, but philosophically, what are your views on parental input into things like curriculum, the books, in the library? I mean, should books be banned? That question. The priorities as far as dealing with children, even vaccination of children. Share with us what you think is the parents' role and what is the school's role.
Sure, that's a really interesting question. I believe that the curriculum should be set by the combination of both the state regulation and the local responsibility that really sits with Superintendent Morse and her team. I think that there should be a high level of transparency, but I don't know that there needs to be kind of a parental oversight of that curriculum. I think that parents should be free to speak and have a venue to speak with that team, should they have any concerns. But as a parent, I am trusting that the people who spend all day, every day, and have devoted their careers to creating the curriculum are well-informed, well-intentioned, and have the best interest of my child at heart. And starting from there, and if there is something that appears way off from that, then I think that there needs to be a good level of transparency. That word has come up several times from several candidates, and I think that curriculum transparency is something that is not immediately present. Like I hear, some candidates talking about a strong emphasis on computer-based education. I'm not seeing that in my current, my son's model, but I also don't know that I have a clear syllabus and a clear understanding of the curriculum that's been issued by the district.
Thank you. David, same question to you. What are your views on where parental rights are or parental input is needed into things like curriculum, the library books, priorities in education?
Yeah, actually, this is the primary reason that I decided to run for school board as a parent, wanting to have input into the decisions that are made at the board level, and to be an advocate and a voice for other parents in the district, because nobody cares about their kids more than parents do. These children are our most precious things in our lives, and we have opinions and differing opinions a lot of times, but as a parent, it's important to have input into the decisions that are being made on about your children. And I think having board members that are parents of current students in the district is very important. I have a vested interest in what goes on, because all the decisions that are being made are impacting my own kids. So definitely very important for parents to have input into all decisions that are being made that affect their children.
Thank you. Phil, same question. What are your views on where parental input is deserved as far as curriculum, library books, other priorities?
These are public schools. These are public schools for all students in the public school district. There's a difference between input and control. Parents ought to have input as to what their goals and aspirations for their children are, what things they're interested in. However, I do not believe that parents ought to have control over curriculum. I don't believe parents ought to have control over banning books, deciding which books ought to be taught, which books ought to be read. I think that's up to the administration and the teachers and the state curriculum people who we vest with those jobs. So as far as I'm concerned, parents can have as much input as they'd like into any meeting, any district meetings or questions that they have, but I do not believe in parents controlling the curriculum in any way.
Thank you. Jim, we'll wrap up with you on this question about parental input.
I think there's two parts to this. One is the ability to have the input, and one is the respect that the board members and school administration need to give to the people who give the input. When I wrote the COVID articles for a little over a year in the Ojai Valley News, I was very, very focused on never criticizing anyone's views about COVID. And some of those views were absolutely different than mine. But I think everybody has the right to have their views, and everybody has the right to express their views, and everybody has the right to have us listen respectfully to their views. This is what's going on in this community, is the shouting down and the my way or the highway sort of approach. As a board member, I will welcome anybody's opinion. And by the way, all you have to do is shop at Vons on Sunday morning and you're going to get some. Or once people in your office know that you're running for school board, I've found out you're going to get plenty of opinions. I'm sure all the other of us have experienced that too. So I absolutely welcome and will respect everybody's opinion. I think ultimately the The decision has to, though, come down to administration and board and state regulations, the things that define how a school district should operate.
Thank you. Jim, we'll stay with you for the next question. And I confess, I'm not quite sure what these questions are asking about. Perhaps you will. The first, and I'm combining a couple here, but there's the question about, do you believe members of the public schools should be able, and I assume they mean parents, should be able to have the option to write public comments to the school board? I would assume the school board does take written comments. So I'm not sure exactly if that's leading to something. And then also about this, there's an OUSD board policy apparently about no surprise questions at school board meetings. I'm assuming that's towards school board members, that they're not supposed to surprise others. But if you could just, I'll give you a little room here to talk about how you see the public and the board engaging in these public meetings. Are there policies that you think should be changed regarding the superintendent, regarding administration, regarding interacting with the public?
Well, I will be elected by the public, and I'm elected by the people in our area. If I am elected, PJ is a terrific candidate too. And I think he would, I won't speak what he would say, but I think he'd feel the same way. We're elected by the public. I feel it's my responsibility to represent the public while understanding as well as I can what the rules and regulations and situation and condition of our school district are. I in no way intend to have any person or any public entity or the school district tell me that we cannot have people come to the meeting and express their opinions in public. I think there's a place for proper dialogue between board members and administration in a public setting that possibly sometimes needs to take place behind closed doors if there's a disagreement between individuals on the board that perhaps is best aired in closed doors. But I do not believe that the public should not be allowed to say whatever they want or write whatever they want, and that we shouldn't give them the option to hear that.
Thank you. Phil, same question to you. Describe what you think is the proper relationship between the public and the school board, and how do we make sure the public is responsive?
I believe the public ought to be able to write questions and comments. I believe those questions and comments ought be made public and ought be published. I believe that those questions and comments ought be listened to at board meetings. I believe the public ought to speak and ask questions or say what they want to say at public meetings. I believe that there is nothing wrong with surprise questions, because if it's a surprise question that people don't have an answer to, you can always say, I'm going to look into it. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. We'll get back to you. I have heard lots of rumblings about the fact that at present, the board does not allow public comments, does not allow publication of those comments or the responses to them, and does not allow questions that haven't already been vetted before the meetings start. I don't particularly like any of those policies.
Okay, thank you. David, same question to you. Would you like me to repeat it, or are you good?
Would you please repeat it?
Sure. We were talking about allowing the public to submit written questions. We're talking about should they be policies that prevent surprise questions. Just in general, how you see the public and the board interacting, and maybe the board and the administration when it comes to public meetings.
Sure. So public engagement is not a problem. It's a great thing that we should encourage, and whether that be written comments or people actually coming to board meetings and voicing their public comments, I think that's great. I think there are other ways, though, for people to interact with the board members through email or maybe even getting together. I know that current board members have a standing offer to meet pretty much anybody for coffee to discuss their concerns. But people want to feel heard, and I think it's important that they are heard. And But we have to also remember that the board only gets together once or twice a month to do the business of the school district. And we need to be respectful of people's time, and these meetings can run late into the evening. And not to say that we shouldn't allow for public comments, but sometimes they can become repetitive. And so we just have to be aware of that as well.
Thank you. And we'll wrap up this question with PJ.
Yeah, I would say that the more public feedback, the better informed the board is. At a couple recent meetings, it's been discussed. It was discussed at the August board meeting at pretty good length about how to approach public comment. So I'll just say I agree with all written comments and questions should be accepted and read at the meeting. I think that is just an open, if someone has a comment that they want to share in writing, please do so. No limit, share it. In terms of in-person comments, I think that the current policy of submitting a speaker card at the beginning of the meeting and then having the opportunity to speak right away, or wait until the agenda item has arrived and then speak before the board, or before the presentation occurs or before the board makes their statements, that seems reasonable to me. Anything that involves more interaction is better in that sense. Observing the limits of, you aren't going to be able to speak for an hour. Maybe the limit is 3 to 5 minutes, but you don't have to submit your question beforehand. Ask whatever you want in your allotted time. And then I really like the idea of just being open to the members of the community. Anybody who wants to ask, I will say, if I'm elected, find me and I will make time for you, period. So thank you.
Thank you. David, we'll begin the next question with you. The world has changed as far as schools and children. We worry about school safety now. We worry about mentally ill people doing harm to our children. We worry about drugs on campus. Share with us your strategies for protecting children. Do you feel that the school district is doing an adequate job to keep children safe and preventing violence and drugs, or do you think there should be?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the very end of that.
Are other strategies that should be put in place in addition? Interesting. I guess I'm having a little problem. Stand by 1 second here. Okay, are you able to hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, I keep telling candidates at all these forums, make sure your Wi-Fi is good. I'm on a hardwired circuit, but I'll just blame the carrier. So, David, I'll repeat the whole question. As far as safety, we want to keep our children safe on campus. Drugs, violence. Do you think that the school district plans are adequate? Do you have strategies or thoughts about improving safety for children?
I saw a really interesting news piece not too long ago about dads that took it upon themselves to make a presence on their children's school campus and what a positive impact that had. And I just thought that was amazing. As parents, we are don't want to completely just outsource our children's education. We still have a responsibility in all of these things. And I just thought it was amazing that those dads did that. And so, if there's ideas like that that are kind of out of the box that could be explored, and certainly safety is a top priority, if not the highest priority for our students.
Thank you. PJ, same question to you. Your thoughts and ideas about making sure that kids are safe.
Sure. So, regarding drugs and alcohol and other kind of behavior items, you might even lump addictive video games into that category. I think that a wellness focus on getting the healthiest possible students is the best way to combat that. The kid who is playing in a sports team, has an after-school club, is studying music, is involved in dance class, that student is less likely to get into trouble in those realms. So that's my statement on that. In terms of physical safety, It's a really hard question. I can honestly say that I don't know. I would bring in I would want to talk with security specialists and find out what more could be done. I know that there is a relationship with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, who provides law enforcement to the Ojai Valley, that could be looked at again to find out if more patrols might make a difference. There's changes to the physical buildings to have more locked doors, more gates. I think that we want to make sure that the kids both feel safe and don't, aren't negatively affected by, those measures. So that is something I would have to look into more. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, same question to you about protecting students, physical violence, and also drugs, alcohol.
I think it's a topic that for those of us who are going to be on the board for the next 4 years, if that happens to be me, we have to stay on top of all the time. It is constantly evolving. Are our teachers and staff and administration aware of this issue? Absolutely. I'm just, my wife just handed me some information here about Nordhoff and and a letter that just went out to the Nordhoff families and staff. My wife works at Nordhoff regarding fentanyl and the opioid epidemic and the dangers and the devastation that happens from that. So I believe at the Nordhoff campus that the leadership and the staff is well aware of the issues. Now, do they have the ability to police that? Of course not. Our staff needs to focus on what they do, and that's teaching. So I agree that we have a relationship with the County Sheriff's Department. We do not have police presence on campus unless asked to be there. And I don't think we necessarily have to have police presence at this time, but we have to stay on top of that at all times. It is a very difficult problem. As far as that problem, I'm going to get back to where I started from, and I've heard it also said that the better the environment and the healthier the environment of the school and the opportunities that children have to thrive in that school, the less likely we are going to have to deal with a large percentage of our students ending up with some of these issues.
Thank you. And Phil, we'll wrap up with you on this question about student safety.
Well, double question. First is dealing with drugs and alcohol. I agree. Education, mentoring, mental health assistance, etc. The kids need to know everything they need to know about the dangers of drugs and alcohol, and everything that the teachers can work with to teach them about stuff. As far as outside threats, tough question. I'm not a fan of armed guards. I'm not a fan of uniformed guards. I would differ with David in one respect. I like the idea of moms on campuses. I think moms tend sometimes to be a little more soothing and less confrontational than a bunch of dads on the campuses might be. So I'd be all in favor of having moms, PTO people out there helping out to see what they could do to see if they can smooth over any issues, especially at Matilaha. Middle school is the roughest age for all kids. It was when my girls were there. I hear it to this day that the kids in the elementary schools are happy, the kids at Nordhoff are happy, and the kids at Matilaha are mostly miserable, as it was back in the 90s when my girls were there. So I think that's where we need to maybe focus on having some of the parents and the PTO people there to help out.
Thank you. We're going to begin the next question. Jim, you're up first on this. And I've done these forums over the years, and this question has come up in the past. I'm sure you're prepared. Swimming pool. As far as getting a swimming pool, do you believe it's still appropriate? How do you think it should be done? I believe there was sort of a sense that it was going to be in the last bond, but maybe it's not. Maybe you could elaborate. What is the solution to this demand or desire for a solid swimming pool?
Swimming pool has been approved. We're moving ahead. I say the school district is moving ahead on the plans. It'll be a 35-meter pool. It'll be on the Nordhoff campus. The site has been located, and they're currently in the plans of starting to do design work. So we will absolutely have a 35-meter fine aquatic facility at Nordhoff High School. I spent my formative years in high school and college, both playing water polo, swimming, and coaching age group swimming. I've spent my 35-year career advocating for the health of my patients, and I think Swimming is valuable from everyone who becomes water safe at age 2, 3, or 4, the people in their 80s or 90s who can no longer bike or walk, but they can still swim for exercise. I'm absolutely committed to making this an aquatic center. It will be there in the next 2 to 3 years. It will be 35 meters. It will be 25 yards wide. It will not be open to the public when our students are in there for practice or during the school hours. It will be open, hopefully before, if we are able to do it, but certainly after school and on the weekends for a small cost to come and spend time at the pool. It's going to be a great place for social interaction, a great place for exercise, and a great place that our valley can be absolutely proud of. So it is one of the reasons I ran for the board, was my dismay over the argument back and forth. And I will be thrilled to help champion making this an aquatic center for everyone over the next 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. Phil, same question to you, but since it may be a little moot if it's coming up, either your thoughts or we'll just keep moving on. So share what you'd like about swimming pool.
Very simply, the plan has been approved. I originally thought a more robust feasibility study would have been preferred. If I were on the board, I would have pushed for one to look at the different options, but that's water under the bridge. Only thing I would say is I'd like to see a little more discussion about what hours it could be open for the public when the kids are not in school. I saw something from the superintendent that basically said this is when it's going to be open on these hours only. And I don't know whether that was done with board permission and approval or not, but I'd be open to seeing what we could do to expand public accessibility to as many hours as possible.
Thank you. David, would you like to share any thoughts about the swimming pool?
I would. As far as I know, they haven't actually started digging yet. So the idea that the ship has sailed, I think maybe isn't completely accurate. I think that maybe the decision-making process was a bit hastened. As Phil said, I would have also liked to have seen a more robust feasibility study conducted. I would also like to see that more community joint use options are explored that usually benefit the community and the district. This kind of opportunity only comes around once in a long while, so we have to make the best use of this opportunity.
Thank you. And PJ, any thoughts about swimming pool?
Oh, yes, I'm passionate about this one. So I think Jim really laid out exactly what the current status of the pool is. It is moving forward. The parameters, design parameters have been set. The designers are currently working on that design. It's not finalized yet. It hasn't been sent in for permitting, and certainly construction has not yet begun. So the items that concern me about the pool are the very small shallow end. With a 35-meter pool, it means that there's going to be just a very small shallow end because of the depth required for a regulation water polo match. I would have liked to have had a little more exploration onto something between a 35-meter and a 50-meter pool, with more of that community use, more of that use for the youngest members of our community. The opportunity has not passed to make adjustments to the design. I think that the 35-meter pool is likely going to happen unless a coalition of, at least 3 board members decides to pull the plug, which I don't expect to happen. But that doesn't mean that we can't add a small recreation pool, a small splash pad. We could extend and make sure that there's lots of sitting areas for our youngest members of our community. There are ways to improve the design that I would love to get my fingerprints on and love to get deep into, given the opportunity.
Thank you. Phil, we're going to move to the next question, and we're getting close to the end, gentlemen. Phil, do you think that if you are elected, you'll be able to bring some skills to perhaps find ways to work with the city government on programs that will benefit students? Do you have any vision for programs working with city or even local nonprofits?
Well, the short answer is yes. The skills I have for most of my legal career, which is almost 50 years now, I've served as a judge, a mediator, an arbitrator, and a settlement master. So as a judge, I make decisions based upon the facts and the law. As a mediator, I get parties together to try and reach settlements before they become litigation issues. As a settlement master, I deal with people who are in the midst of litigation issues. How do they can settle those particular issues that have been refined already? And as an arbitrator, I get to make decisions based upon argues put in front of me. I have 50 years worth of experience at reading complicated and complex documents, understanding them, synthesizing them, figuring out pros and cons, coming up with ideas, communicating with people, trying to persuade people, listen to people, be persuaded by them. Those are the skills I have. I think it's the perfect skill set for this particular job, which is why I decided to offer my services instead of remaining happily almost completely retired.
Thank you. PJ, share with us what you think your skills or your vision are for perhaps collaborating with the city or other agencies.
Sure. I think that working with the city council is really important. There will be, kind of some critical moments where there will be those interactions, often surrounding development. I think that there will be more development questions during the 4-year term that's up for election right now. I think that there's lots of agencies that the district either has or should partner with, one of them being the library of Ventura County. I know that there's a program currently going on at Miners Oaks Elementary that's in collaboration with them. I think that should the district office, that downtown facility be developed, that a central library for Ojai, could certainly use an improvement. I mentioned a handful of those nonprofit housing organizations that could be partners in a development sense. But the bottom line is, I think that there needs to be a base level of civility. There were a couple interactions that were recorded by the paper between the city council and the school board that were really cringeworthy. And I think that everybody here agrees that there's got to be a base level of civility and understanding that other person is doing their best. So are you. And there's no reason for a lot of the kind of animosity that seems to have come up in the most recent years.
Thank you. Jim, share with us your thoughts about working with the city, vision for mutual projects, your skills that'll help in that area.
Well, as regards to working with the city, I've already worked with them a little bit on some of our COVID policies, and the city council is going to change substantially. And I think it will be a council that is compatible with working with our school board. We'll have at least 2 new council members on the board. One is up for re-election. And I look forward to working with that group of people. I think it's going to be a more congenial group of people and easier to work with after the election come November 8th. As far as my own experience, I've worked with a number of nonprofits over the years. I've been the chairperson of our Ojai Valley Community Hospital Foundation, which is over 20 years has donated over $12 million to our local hospital. I've been on the Rotary Club of Ojai West for over 30 years and past president, and we put up the Rotary Park there at the entrance to the city at the Y, and had to work with the city to come up to a joint use agreement and continue to work with the city. The city helps provide maintenance for that for us. I've been involved with the Ojai Educational Foundation as regards to interacting with the school district. So I think I've been in a lot of situations where I have to act as a person who goes between what the group I represent and another group, and I'm very respectful always of the other group.
Thank you. And David, we'll wrap up with you on this question.
As far as interactions with the city, like Jim was just saying, we have an opportunity here for a new start with 3 new board members, and I believe that we should be the change that we want to see. If I was to be elected, then I would want to be the example of sincere and respectful discourse, even in disagreement, that we would want to set for our students. As far as potential opportunities for partnerships with the city or local businesses, we have a great CTE program. It's career technical education with different pathways that we can develop internships with cities and with the city and local businesses to provide work experience opportunities for our students.
Thank you. We are at the point where we're pretty much have gone through all the questions, and we're going to start closing statements in a moment, but I have this available, so I thought I'd share as far as outlining the districts. So the yellow on the left side is Area 1. That's where we have two of our candidates vying for your vote. That's David Walker and Phil Monchars. Over on the right here, this light purple is trustee area number 5. And our other two candidates, PJ Garahan and Jim Halverson, are vying to represent you there. So with that, we will go ahead and begin closing statements. We'll do it in the reverse order. David Walker will be our first candidate. David, whenever you're ready, you have 1.5 minutes.
Well, I'll just keep it brief. And again, thank you for hosting this candidate forum. I think I made it clear that as a parent, my priorities for being an advocate for parents on the board, for prioritizing financial responsibility and transparency. And, I truly hope that the best candidate wins, because either way, one of us is going to be making important decisions that affect my children. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Jim Halverson.
Well, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to the OUSD Board of Trustees, and I do want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters. And David, thank you for your obvious great skill at moderating a meeting such as this. But it's going to be my privilege and my responsibility to represent all who live not only in our district, that's a little bit arbitrary, required for legal reasons, but arbitrary, but represent all who live in our valley within the boundaries of the Ojai Unified School District, and to do it thoughtfully and openly, and I absolutely respect our two younger candidates who have kids in school. I just want to say that I have not left being involved in school. I started out as president of Monica Ross when my kids were 3 and 4 years old, and continued throughout their time in the school to being the first president of the Maestro Support Board when the kids were in high school, and then have continued on with the football team, with free high school physicals every year, with producing the school musical, which we'll have another one called Curtains this spring, and being very involved with our teachers over there. I've also been very involved in the community with a number of things which I've elaborated. And I think that balance of the things that I have done and continue to do in the community, and the things that I have done and continue to do for our schools, will serve all of us well, as I can balance the needs of both. And I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Our next candidate, PJ Garahan.
Yeah, I want to thank you, David. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to the League for providing this forum. I'm ready for 10 more questions, honestly. I love this. And this is obviously really close to my heart. I think that the voters in Area 5, which, Jim, I totally agree, is somewhat arbitrary. These lines were just drawn and ratified. But our task is to serve the entire school district, not just the needs of District 5. I think that, Jim is a very qualified candidate, and, either of us would do a good job. I'm glad that we have two different choices. We're coming from two different perspectives. I'm really passionate about the facilities. I'm passionate about the educator compensation. I really have a ton of ideas about what to do with the main district office, tweaking the pool design. And then also, I've just got a lot of skin in this game. I have absolutely every motivation, and I know that's shared among the four of us, but every motivation to make this school district and the educational experience at the highest level it can be, and to attract families into the public school system. I do not believe that is a lost cause. I think that it is a real possibility. And it's through student excellence and attraction in that way that it's possible. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you. And our next candidate, Phil Monchars.
Yes, thank you. In addition to some of the things I mentioned in the opening statement, you all ought to know that I've also served on several local and regional boards, and I have advised and represented several public entity boards, including the Santa Barbara High School District, the Santa Barbara Community College District, and the Santa Barbara Metropolitan Transit District. I love Ojai. I want to give back to the community, give back to the current parents and children in school. I expect to listen, to discuss, to analyze all the issues that come before us and decide each and every issue based upon the best interests of our schools and our community. I firmly believe in a diverse and inclusive society where all people are respected and treated fairly. And I look forward to using my skills to assist the Ojai School District. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. I once again want to show off my skills at sharing screens. This one is some important information for our audience regarding voting. So as a reminder, every registered voter in California will receive a ballot. Those will go out in around October 10th. So 10 days, 9 days, you'll be getting a ballot. You can return those by the mailbox, by drop boxes spread around the county, or you can take it with you to a voting center. Even if you plan to go in and vote in a voting center, if you like that way of doing things, you should take your mail-in ballot with you so that they can make sure and update their systems as well. If you want to track your ballot to make sure it's been processed by the post office or received at election, you can go to where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov and enter your information, and automatically you'll get email updates when your ballot moves through the system. There's great resources available online, votersedge.org/CA. You can go there, put in your address, and it'll show you all of the candidates running in every district that covers your home. Reminder that the League website also has a lot of great information, www.lwvventuracounty.org. You can click on candidate forums, see all of our forums that we have coming up. This was, I think, the number 7th this week alone. We'll probably do about 18 or 19 of these. So depending on which city, which area you're interested in, you can go back and watch the videos after they're recorded. This video tonight will be available within about 24 hours. I'd like to remind everybody, though, that this is our right. This is our right in our Constitution to vote. The League of Women Voters urges you to make sure you take that right seriously, turn in your ballot, a lot of resources to learn about. And we also want to thank these candidates for their effort to run and represent your community. Finally, I wish to thank our League volunteers, Kathy Morgan, you met already, Pat Essick, Cheryl Collard, Maddie Park, and Wayne Morgan. I'm David Marin with the League of Women Voters. Thank you and good night.
Good night.